Welcome to High Level Gaming, everyone. I'm your host, Brian Giordano, and today I'm going to show you how I created a fantasy wargaming hill for fantasy miniature gaming and also for role-playing games. So I want to apologize up front because when I started the project, I wasn't sure if I was going to do a video, so I had completed several of the steps, unfortunately, in the beginning, but none of these steps are steps that I'm not going to continue to do and explain to you, so you'll be able to go back to the beginning and do what I did from the beginning with no problem. So basically, I've just stacked the foam board here and had drawn my flagstone that I planned on using inside the circle, and also outside just as the preliminary walkway before the decline down the hill. I apologize again for that, but I think I'll give you everything you need if you wanted to do something similar yourself. So thank you for being here, and let's go ahead and start. So here I'm just removing a 10-pound weight that I had placed on top of the Mystic Circle in order to make sure that there weren't any major gaps in between the foam board. Right now I'm cutting a straight line and to make a clean cut, a clean break in the foam, because I want to be able to use the foam board cutter in a second here. So as you can see, I'm using this foam cutter. It's a foam cutter table, and it makes this type of job very quick along with so much else. I highly recommend if you're doing any foam board work, do yourself a favor and get one of these. I got this at Amazon for like $75. So I'm just making cuts around the perimeter. I want to give myself some extra room if I decide to do something creative. So I'm giving myself some extra space on the outsides, plus some room to make an angle from the top to the bottom instead of a straight up and down. That's the declination part of the hill. So I'm just working my way down the grade, and I'm going to remove that piece, and that'll be the remaining descension from the top working its way to the bottom. So I remove the piece. I'm not too concerned about the surface because I'm going to sand that down later, and I'm also going to be flocking it with sand and other stone. So I'm not too worried about that. All right, just trying to level it out here. So I decide I'm going to take it all the way down to the very bottom, and I'm going to remove a large chunk, and I'm just maneuvering the foam wire cutter wand around, trying to keep the same contours and angles as I had going into this. So I'm trying to be careful here. This is actually a very slow process. It takes a while to get this wand through. I'm successful here, breaking off some pieces. And then finally I have the entire from top to bottom. I was going to go another layer, but I decided this is a bit much for miniature wargaming. I mean, how many turns would it take to get from the top to the bottom? Depending on what rule book you're talking about, what rules. I use a Middle-earth strategy battle game, so that would take quite a few turns to get from the top to the bottom, and I don't want to make any teams useless in a general game, although I think I would only use this in a scenario-based game. So here I'm just adding some character and some contours to the mountainside, hillside rather. And I've also decided to leave some surface area so that way I could have miniatures on multiple levels, perhaps archers, or even fighting from up above. I'm just again making some contours in the side so it doesn't look so smooth and non-realistic. Oh no, that's right. I did decide to do one more. I'm going to do one more level So this is what I did at each step. I just kind of went around the perimeter, but not on the very edge, so I wouldn't have like glue heaping out of the sides. And then I would do kind of like a crisscross to make sure it was secure all the way around after it dried. And then I put the 10-pound plate back down. And there I have my final piece. That's the entire elevation I went with. I believe that was 5 levels of foam board. And here I'm using an orbital sander to just smooth off the inclination. Again, I'm not too worried about making it perfect because I know I'm going to go back over this with PVA glue and flocking it with a mixture of sand and various stone. But I didn't want it to be too rugged so that would be revealed even with the PVA and stuff and sand. And here I'm just taking a piece of hand sandpaper. I'm trying to remove the lines between the levels as much as possible, but I'm not too concerned. All right, here I'm just mixing up some PVA and glue and also water. I would say probably 1/4 to 1/5 water to PVA. I don't want it very runny, but I also don't want it really thick and then drying with that, kind of that chalky glue, Elmer's glue look. I didn't want that either, so I did water it down a little bit. And here I'm just I'm blotching PVA down on all the areas that I plan to flock with stone and sand. And now I am flocking. This whole project took, oh boy, I'm going to say between 6 to 7 hours of total time. A lot of drying, a lot of, laying down the layers and cutting the outside, gluing another layer. So that took a while. Yeah, I would say 6 to 7, maybe even up to 8 hours. All right, so I've knocked all the excess off, and here I'm just going over with a mix of PVA and water and just making sure I secure the surface. And what I'm doing here is I'm going one more round with PVA and water because I know I missed some spots and I didn't want to leave it like that. So I did some touch-up work, and you will see me fixing some areas that I missed initially. I also wanted to get some sand in the gaps of the Mystic Circle so you couldn't see the breaks in the model as clearly. I wanted to break that up and make it more subtle. And so I just simply flock the new areas, and as you can see, it does look better than it did before. And I hit that up with PVA and water again. I don't believe I put it in the video. And then I let it dry, of course. I come back to it, and I'm using the cheapest flat paint I can get that has that'll dry with a somewhat of a modest earth color. And I'm using that for all the top surface areas besides the castle stone that I'm going to do with a gray primer later. I'm putting this on quite thick, and the reason for that is I am going to be flocking with multiple flocks from Woodland Scenics, just a grass flock, and I use about 3 different blends when I do it. I'm putting this on thick because I don't want to be coming back around. I want to make sure there's full surface coverage and that flock will stick everywhere that I intended to. Although not the declination. I'm going to do something a little bit different with that, and you'll see that coming up. So here's my first flock. I use 3 different tones. As you see, this is more of a bright green, or a darker green. The other one was a medium. And this is more like of a burnt grass. So what I'm doing here is I'm just letting it flow down the sides to rest up against the edge. Here I'm basically using a brush to brush off all of the flock that just happened to stick, because I don't want that when I go over and try to paint the sides of the hill with gray primer. So here we go. I'm just using a cheap gray primer. I think I got this at Walmart, although it's been so long I can't even remember. So I'm making sure I get good coverage. I don't want to be doing this multiple times, but usually when it comes to anything porous, I'm going to have to go over it one more time. I'm putting it on semi-thick, not quite as thick as the brown, but pretty thick, because I do have some pores that I need the paint to seep into. And that's another reason why I like getting this type of paint. Okay, so here I'm just going back over some spots I missed. I'm really getting the paint in there good, because there's some definite recesses from when I did the edging of the flagstone on the top there. Just touching up some spots again. Down here, now I've taken a darker gray with hobby paint and from Michael's craft store, and I'm filling in some darker recesses, and I'm trying to get any last pieces that I missed. And then here I'm finally going over with some dry brushing. Unfortunately, I didn't capture all the dry brushing video, so I just kind of show you that was my first layer of dry brushing, which was a general medium, just using hobby paints. And now I'm putting in about a third, mixing a third of that same paint with white. I'm dry brushing with the new color, and as you can see, it starts to raise the detail and make everything more pronounced. The castle stone immediately looks a lot better, and everything is kind of coming out the way I had hoped, and I'm just hoping that the Mystic Circle follows suit. I'm happy with this. You know, you can see the lines of the different levels, and you know, unfortunately it's not perfect, but I'm pretty happy with this. I didn't think I would ever do something quite like this, but I really wanted to use the Mystic Circle for something cool, and I thought Weathertop would be, you know, a cool scene to try to recreate either in miniature wargaming or fantasy role-playing. So I'm just dry brushing now some browns. I'm using three total tones of brown. The base from the paint can, and then I'm going to go over with 2 different tones of just hobby paint, again from Michael's. Now these paints I bought over a decade ago, well over a decade. They don't even look like that anymore. They don't carry that. And then I'm going over with a lighter, more of a dusty, dry brown. Just adding some earth brown here and some giving a kind of like a dusting, because this tone is going to dry very light over the top of the other browns. And that gives you a good look. Okay, so here I decided I'm going to have some brush, some flocking on the outside. That's actually flock that I had taken from my previous pour when I flocked the surface before. And so now I'm just adding a couple patches along the path, the declination here, just to give it a little bit more character. And I'm also putting down some tufts of grass, large grass, to make it stand out a little bit more detailed. Now I finally attached the mythic stone, and I am going over it with a glaze of the gray that I end up wanting to use as the base color, although I did really like the primer gray that I ended up with as a base, but I just had a slighter tone that I wanted to use overall. I would have done this with an airbrush, but it got clogged, and I just took the remaining paint from that and hand brushed it myself. So here I have let that dry, and I'm going over with my first coat of dry brushing, a lighter gray. And I want these stones to stand out from the gray on the side of the hill. I don't want them to look similar. I want the mythic stones to really stand out and be have their own look. As you can see, not too bad, and it's much lighter than the gray on the sides of the hill, and that's exactly what I was going for. It's more of a chalky look. And then to finally finish it off, I'm putting some very loose flock as kind of showing vegetation that could have gotten on top of the stones over time. It was also something cool that I saw on the display box of the Mythic Circle itself, and I wanted to incorporate that into my project as well. So just in spots that, I don't know, seem like they would make sense or at least look good, I'm adding glue just straight out of the bottom, and then adding that loose flock, and I really like the look of it. I do some around the bases of the stones as well, and also along the tops. And that's it, and this is the finished product. I am happy with it, especially for the amount of time that I put into it. I'm looking forward to seeing how it'll play in both wargaming and role-playing. So thank you so much for watching, everyone. Trust me, you can do this as well. Thank you from High Level Gaming, and take care.